Hey everybody, BigBlackHatMan here, and today we're continuing our look at AFI's Top 10 Westerns list with number 7. Hey, I'd like to take this opportunity before we can get started to just go ahead and bury the hatchet between you and I. How does that work? Seriously though, this is a buddy film, and we should be friends. Wait, I got it. Hey, no matter what you say, I'm not changing my opinions on Stagecoach. Buddy, time's over. You're dead to me. Whoa. You know what? I don't think we get off to a weirder start than that. That's just strange. At any rate, today we're looking at number 7 on the AFI's list. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid on BigBlackHatMan vs. AFI.
Paul Newman is Butch Cassidy, and the Sundance Kid is Robert Redford. Catherine Ross is Etta Place.
Dynamite's ready, Butch.
Well, that ought to do it.
Think you used enough dynamite there, Butch?
Most of this is true, and all of it blazes with action. You've never met a pair like Butch and Sundance.
Well, we're back in business, boys and girls.
Outlaws with style, in a class all their own.
You know, when I was a kid, I always thought I was going to grow up to be a hero.
Don't tell me how to rob a bank. I know how to rob a bank.
And anything you ask of me, I'll do. Except one thing.
So what is Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid about? Well, specifically, it's about Robert Leroy Parker and Harry Longbaum, a.k.a. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, obviously. And it's about their relationship and friendship and the things they go through. And, well, it's an interesting period in the West. The Wild West is ending. The outlaws are going out of style. And these are two of the last outlaws, really. And they need to find a way to make it now. And it's really, really hard. They can't really rob banks anymore. Robbing trains is becoming harder and harder, and now they have a whole posse chasing them. A posse made up of super lawmen. Kind of scary, yeah. And so they end up going to South America. But in the meantime, they have various adventures and things, and they're good friends. Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is about the friendship between the two guys, and the give and take. Really, Newman and Redford, the two actors who play the respective characters, they're what makes the difference here. Paul Newman and Robert Redford in this are great. And to be honest with you, this went through a lot of casting changes. Robert Redford almost didn't get this part, but that's a digression for another time. There are side characters they interact with here and there, but they're not very memorable. They sort of come and go. The most memorable one is Etta Place, which is the Sundance Kid's girlfriend. And she also has sort of a relationship with Butch, but it's partially because they're, you know, kind of the same two guys in a way, because they're such close friends. But it's complicated. You have to watch the movie. It's not really a sexual tension thing. I mean, that's kind of what you expect, but it's not what you get from my description. Watch the movie. Watch the movie. You'll understand. At any rate, they end up having to go down to South America because they're pushed out of the Wild West. It gets so tough for them in a place that was once easy for outlaws to make a living that they actually have to leave and go somewhere else. And from there, things sort of slowly unravel for them. And I'm going to tell you this, the movie doesn't have much of a plot. I mean, honestly, it's more about what these two characters are up to. It's more of an episodic path as they go along through their evolution toward their undoing, quite frankly, and how it comes to be. It's still a really good movie, but I'll get into that too, you know. I hope I explained what this is about. You know, there's really not much plot to this, which was harder to summarize than I thought. Just think of it this way. Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid have a heck of a good time together. There. Plot summarized. Well, to be honest with you, there are a lot of subtle reasons that this one's a classic. There's a lot of nuance and details here. A lot of things we can go into. Newman and Redford. Yes, Newman and Redford. But there's also a very interesting anti-hero element that we have to explore more thoroughly. Newman and Redford. I get that. They're the stars and they're very important to the movie. But we also have to analyze very specifically the crucial timing of the release of this film that went into making it a classic. Newman and Redford. Gotcha. Newman and Redford. Yes, they're very, very important to why this film is a classic. I gotcha. Well, duh. Okay. Newman and Redford. I get it. Newman and Redford, yeah. Let's be really honest. Paul Newman and Robert Redford are a lot of what make this film. And, man, they're great together. They really are great together. They have a chemistry. a chemistry you rarely see between actors. And man, in everything they do in this film, whether they're just speaking or they're in an action scene together, they just click. Ebb and flow. No one's trying to show anybody up. No one's trying to push anybody to the side. It's just natural. They did other films together, and it still worked just as well. But this is the first time they did it together, and this is the only Western they did. And it's just such a beautiful thing how well the film works. And it's because they work so well together. There were a lot of other people considered for Robert Redford's part, and none of them got it. Thank goodness. This film would not be the same film had someone else other than Redford gotten the part. I can't imagine anyone else having that chemistry with Newman. Newman was a great actor in his own right, and Redford's a great actor in his own right. And somehow together, they just made everything work. Now, as much as that contributes to this being a classic, there are other small elements that help this film. The anti-hero period. This is from the spaghetti westerns of the mid-'60s, really up to today even. Anti-heroes in westerns are much more popular than they were, and these two were the perfect anti-heroes in many ways. And many times they don't even seem like anti-heroes. They seem like they're real heroes, even though they're robbers and thieves. But the audience identifies with them. The audience likes them. They're charming, and that's part of the chemistry element, but it's also partially how they were written, not written as true villains. I've already talked about in the summary how this is sort of an end-of-the-era Western period, and it just is placed so nicely into this film. The director did a nice job of contributing all those factors and making it feel like an end of an era, and it's a time when Westerns were slowly sort of slipping away from the popular consciousness. So the film works on that level too, and it's just such a well-timed, well-made film. And it's not without flaws, and we'll talk about those flaws, but the reason this one is a classic is just because it's so many elements coming together just right. In different hands and a different director with a different set of actors, this film might have failed, because I'm going to tell you what, it has its weaknesses, and we'll go into that. But as it is a classic, and there's a reason it's classic. And pretty simply put, it's Robert Redford, Paul Newman. Man, they work together so well, and they take this film and really elevate it and make it what it is today. Well, my opinion, simply put, is that this is a very good film. Newman and Redford. Did you just recycle that from earlier? Maybe. But I have some budgetary concerns. Yeah, that's not really a problem on this show. Don't worry about that. Anyway, this is a really fun buddy film. Why can't we be friends? Why can't we be friends? Why can't... Oh my, singing. Let's move on. Anyway, so at this point, I've heaped a lot of praise on this film for the character interaction, for the dialogue, for the jokes. Because the jokes are what make a lot of the dialogue work. The humor is really good. Parts of it are really, really funny. There's such a nice dynamic going on. When they're serious, they're nice and serious. When they're funny, they're very funny. But this film's not without flaws. One of the flaws, I would say, is some of the action scenes are not great. They're good. There's some really, really solid action scenes. There's a scene where they jump off a cliff that looks really, really good. There's some horse trick scenes that look really, really good. But these scenes are kind of chopped up, and there's some kind of boring scene. There's a bicycle scene, which some people really like. I personally think it's kind of ho-hum and feels like padding to fill out that portion of the film. So some of the action's a little hit and miss, and there's some still shots in between that some people like. I personally actually kind of like them. I have heard some complaints about them, though, in the past, people who do not like that portion of the film. So whether you're going to like it or not, that's up to you. I like the still images they use in the middle of the film to sort of transition a portion of their movie. One of the real downsides of this film, and it's not something you may notice the first time you watch the film, but once you give this multiple viewings, you may start to realize they didn't take a lot of time on the plot with this film. They just really counted more on Newman and Redford bantering. And so there's times when the story really stalls. And there's times when the story's not really even existent. In fact, it doesn't seem like they have a goal at all. It's not until the last, I'd say, 30 minutes they really go, oh, well, we better give them conflict and conclusion. And they have this one incident, and I don't want to tell you the incident because it would really give away a lot of the end of the movie. But they have this one incident that sort of leads them to this downward spiral that brings them to the climax of the film. And, well, the climax, this is kind of obvious, because if you know historically what happened to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, that's where the film ends. And so, yeah, it drops down to that moment. So, I will say that the screenwriter doesn't deserve a lot of credit for the good things about this film. Though he may have written some of that dialogue doesn't work without the actors that you had delivering it, I think. I think this is one of the instances where the writing was probably below what you actually got out of it. I don't know how often that happens, but I think this is one of those cases where I would say it probably did. Because the plot is just not very strong. And the first half of the film, where they're doing random things like not robbing a bank, and then robbing a train, and then being chased across the Wyoming plains. There's a scene with Etta at her house, and it all feels kind of random and hit and miss, and just like... And it works because of the characters, but if you just took it on the plot alone, it's a little bit weak. And I could see where someone maybe complain about that. So, I really like this film. Don't get me wrong. But I want to point out that there are negatives to this film, and as you sit down to watch it, there might be things that you personally don't like, and there are things that do rub me slightly the wrong way, despite the fact that I would sit down and watch this film virtually any time. And so that's my opinion, for better or worse. You have to kill me in the comments section. So, you know. So does this movie deserve its spot? Well, probably, possibly. Why not? I don't see why not. Well, it may not make a personal list, but it's still really good. Logically speaking, yeah, it probably should make the list. Sounds good to me, buddy. Of course, you did get Stagecoach wrong, so what do you know? Let it go. Okay. So let's be honest here. Does this film deserve its spot? Yeah, it does. Would it make my personal top 10 list? It probably wouldn't. Now here's the problem. When you make a top 10 list, you have 30 or 40 really great films. Maybe more. And now you're nitpicking. You're really picking nits out of it. And the lack of a plot in this film, the fact that they just sort of cobble it together out of almost seemingly different scenes between Newman and Redford, has always bothered me just a little bit. And so I've always sort of slightly shuffled it to the side and maybe dropped it into the top 11 through 20 or 21 through 30, somewhere in there, but I've never quite had it in my own personal top 10. Now, at the same time, if the AFI wants to put it in the top 10 list, it's a solid pick. It's a really good piece of cinema. In fact, it's a piece of cinema I would advise cinephiles and film students and acting students to watch, because it works on so many levels, and it fits in nicely. It even has some mild historical significance from a Western standpoint, in that it was a part of that growing anti-hero movement, and this one was a real charming film. A lot of the films have been more gritty before this, and this one sort of added a little element of charm, with Newman and Redford both being, you know, charming. Like that, you see, charming. And that is a nice little piece of historical significance. There were some other charming films in there too, you could argue, and so maybe it's not quite as unique as I'm making it out to be, but it is at least mildly historically significant. So this film is actually a very solid pick, and as a matter of fact, I'm going to be honest with you, the AFI does a nice job getting more solid as we go down this list. The first three were the ones I had the biggest beef with, and I've already got past those, and so now I'm going to be a lot more laudatory. Maybe not necessarily AFI, because I'm going to be honest with you, there are times when it seems like they sloppily just kind of fell into their pick, because they didn't give me criteria. Without giving me criteria, I'm just kind of saying, okay, you picked this film because. In fact, there's a few films I'm going to make mild arguments against because I feel like they sloppily just fell into them. But Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, it's a really good film, and I think it does. Yeah, it belongs on the list. Maybe not my own personal list, but it does belong, because it's just that solid of a film. So, I guess that's all. Happy trails. Here's looking for number 6, and watch out for those rough patches. Really elevate it and make it what it is today. Oh.